want to talk about this breaking news with CNN legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Shan Wu is joining us, and CNN legal analyst Renato Mariotti. He's also a former federal prosecutor. Renato, you saw this news from Jerome Corsi this morning. First, he was in negotiations with the special counsel over a plea deal. Now he says he will not sign it and they can put him in jail as long as they want. What's your reaction to this today?
Well, you know, he's very foolish to be discussing this publicly. Whenever I've negotiated plea deals on either side, either now for my clients or when I was a federal prosecutor, it's best to keep these negotiations and discussions private. Everything Mr. Corsi is telling CNN and telling these right-wing outlets can be used by Mueller against him. I suspect that Mueller will go forward and bring charges if Corsi doesn't change his mind very soon.
Shan, what's your reaction to this? Because I do wonder, when it comes to Jerome Corsi specifically, when you're talking about negotiations or now lack thereof with the Mueller team, is there reason for President Trump to be worried when he sees this playing out publicly? Or at the very least, or is this all Roger Stone should be very worried?
Well, Kate, unquestionably, Roger Stone should be worried. I agree with Renato. It's very foolish of Corsi to take this course, but this seems to be the age of the Twitter plea negotiations now, which is very peculiar. And the one voice that's silent on Twitter, of course, is the Mueller folks. They remain silent, so we don't know what they have. But there is no way that Corsi can have met that many hours without them knowing everything about him, so he has really no defense left whatsoever. I think the president should be worried about two things. One, of course, generally, if there really is a path back to Stone and that the president knew or encouraged WikiLeaks getting these emails and releasing them, that's a big, big problem. The secondary worry is simply the overall continued path of various people in his circle getting indicted and pleading guilty to false statements, giving more cooperation that he and his team don't fully know what they're talking about. And that generally is going to be worrisome for him. But it's just hard to know whether this is something really substantive leading to real collusion or not, or whether it's more these folks getting caught with their actual lies, but not exactly on the Russian interference part.
Renato, from what we're seeing play out publicly, does this definitely mean, if you had to guess, that Jerome Corsi will be indicted?
Well, sure. I mean, you have a man, assuming what he's saying is accurate, that he was told that he was going to be indicted and that he was in negotiations with Mueller. The special counsel and no other federal prosecutor is going to tell you that you're going to be indicted if they don't intend to do that. So you can expect an indictment of Corsi to come out. And then, you know, I have to say, I don't think that this is somebody that Mueller is just going after on his own. I suspect that he is trying to put pressure on Corsi because he wants to have Corsi as a witness against Stone. And Stone is somebody who, of course, was in frequent contact with the president, which makes him potentially a very important person in this puzzle.
And Shanlon, this is not all that's happening today with regard to goings on with the Russia investigation. George Papadopoulos, he's going to jail. You got Paul Manafort's team heading back into court. What else?
Yeah, so Papadopoulos, we're waiting for him to finally serve his sentence. You know, he'd asked the judge to delay it because of also a Roger Stone associate who's been suing to basically to challenge the Mueller authority, say it's unconstitutional. So he was hoping, Papadopoulos, to wait out that decision. A judge said, no, that's not happening. You're to report to jail today. We're also waiting to see if we learn any details on the Manafort cooperation. There is a report that's due to the court. Remember, it was just about 10 days ago where the special counsel had asked for a 10-day extension, which is a little bit unusual here because they've been normally asking for 60-day extension. So maybe we may learn more about Paul Manafort's cooperation. It's really unclear. That would obviously be key details in this entire investigation. And really, that's about it for now. You know, we wait to see if anything else drops this week. There's been a lot of anticipation that Mueller is working on a lot of stuff. Certainly the report on the president's mind even today. And that sort of seems to be the talk a lot right now, is what will this report that Mueller eventually puts out entail? What kind of details will it have? And where does this lay in terms of the president? You know, how much will the report focus on the president?
Well, and on Manafort, Shan, when the judge granted the request was said this in part, that it would, quote, allow them to provide the court with a report that will be of greater assistance in the court's management of this matter. Make that English for me. What does that mean? What could that mean?
It most likely means that they'll be able to tell the court how helpful he's been and how productive that help has been, and that will help the court in terms of ultimately what kind of a sentence they want to fashion for him. I don't think we can expect we're going to get a lot of details on that, because that's typically going to be done under seal. They're not going to reveal that. Now, I think it is very important, as Shimon pointed out, the length of time they asked for was a rather short term. If they ask for more time here, I think it's reasonable to infer that there is some more valuable contributions going on in the background.
Yeah, contrary to the Jerome Corsi route, Paul Manafort has gone a bit of a different route when it comes to his legal defense. Let me play one thing for you guys, Renato. Alan Dershowitz, of course, a longtime Harvard law professor, someone who's been a supporter of the president, he had this to say yesterday about the Mueller report whenever it does come out. Listen.
I think the report is going to be devastating to the president, and I know that the president's team is already working on a response to the report. When I say devastating, I mean it's going to paint a picture that's going to be politically very devastating. I still don't think it's going to make a criminal case, because collusion is not criminal.
I mean, you give me your take. It doesn't seem that Alan Dershowitz it's unlikely that he's been in communication with the Mueller team in terms of exactly what's being put in the report, but what do you think of what he said?
You know, I have gone up against Alan on television and on Twitter and elsewhere, and he's consistently had the very, I think, radical legal position that nothing that Trump has done could possibly be a crime. He's still sticking to that. This seems to me a way of walking it back a little bit by saying, look, he's done some things that are damaging, but still nonetheless sticking to, I'd say, his legal position. Look, there's no question that if you string together a lot of the things that the president has done just on obstruction of justice alone, that would be, you would think that would be politically damaging. I'm not a political expert, but it would seem problematic for the president. But, you know, I will say that Dershowitz is in a very, very small minority of people who think it's impossible for any of that to amount to being a crime.
Let us stand by and see together, at least for the next 5 minutes, when something else is going to drop. Great to see you, Shimon. Thanks for bringing the breaking news. Great to see you guys. I really appreciate it.